Welcome in to another edition of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're here with another Best Bets episode today for a big Saturday slate. We're going to have massive Saturday slates for the rest of the year now that conference play. We're in the middle of conference play now. So going to have a lot of really good power conference games to cover here. And yeah, we'll be here every single Friday for the rest of the year to cover these games for you. And as for our progress this season, we're up 25 units so far on the year. So having a pretty good year. We had a little stretch there where we didn't do so well, but we're trending in the right direction here again. So glad you've stayed with us throughout the entire season. It's been a fun year so far, and we hope to keep it going here. And to follow our progress and follow what all of our action for the rest of the season, and to see our past picks from even opening night this season, you can see that on our action network at Mainly Hoops One. You'll be able to see every single pick that we've made all year long. And other ways to follow our picks are through Twitter, as we'll post there every single day. We'll put our best bets articles on there, as well as just our picks for the day if we don't have an article for that. And you can find our Twitter account at Mainly Hoops. And you can also join the Discord channel where we post all of our picks in real time as we're betting them. And you can find the link to our channel in the Twitter and Instagram bios. And the Instagram bio is also, or the name for the account is Mainly Hoops as well. So make sure to join that so you don't miss out on anything. Any picks that we make, we're also betting a ton of player props, and we don't necessarily write a ton of articles for the player props. So then most of the time you're going to just find those in the Discord. Once in a while you'll find them on Twitter, but for the most part, those will be found in the Discord, where people are taking advantage of that, and we've done pretty well in that front this season. So don't miss out on that. And like I said before, we have shirts available for purchase. So if you'd like one, DM our Instagram or Twitter to get more info on that. Starting to sell those now, so don't miss out on that either. And with that, we'll dive into the weekend slate. Another really good weekend slate. We'll start with a Friday play. We're a little bit short on time with the Friday play, but our best play of the day will be Michigan +4 at Purdue. I was on record on the last podcast saying that Michigan would win this game by double digits, but I've kind of eased my take on that when I looked into it a bit more. But overall, I still really like Michigan in this game. Looked into it a bit more. Michigan's defense hasn't been as great in conference play as it was in non-con, but definitely still like it here. And it's mostly because of Michigan's rim dominance being the biggest factor in this game for me. As the two-man game of Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden can have major success over what I would consider a lesser front court in Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think the 4-5 pick and roll in this game could really carve up this Matt Painter defense, and a Matt Painter defense that is probably expecting even more negative regression, as people are talking about the addition of the new lineup, as it has helped them defensively, but I do think there's been some 3-point luck there as well. But it is a mismatch on the interior, as Michigan, they're third nationally in 2-point field goal percentage offense, while Purdue is just 226th defensively in that area. And that's not something that a Purdue team is really used to. They used to have Zach Edey in the middle there, but now they have a more offensive-minded center in Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's not a rim protector really at all. And they've had to switch up some things defensively to kind of mask that area. And they've done a decent job of keeping teams away from the rim, Purdue, that is. But I think the playmaking of Danny Wolf and these guards will have a ton of success when they do get into the lane, and they'll be able to score at the rim if they can get there at a high clip. But if Purdue is going to be collapsing in the lane, they're going to give up a high volume of unguarded catch and shoot jumpers, just as they have pretty much all year. And like I said, they've been very lucky defending them. They're 91st percentile against unguarded jumpers in points per possession, which, unguarded jumpers, it's merely a luck stat, like I've said a few times here on this podcast. And, some of that regression, the negative regression, hit them against Ohio State in a home loss. And I expect it to happen even more here against a better shooting team in the Michigan Wolverines. And, I expect them to have a big day if these shots are given to them. Guys like Trey Donaldson, Namari Burnett, Will Cheddar, and Sam Walters off the bench are great shooters off the catch. And I I do expect them to expose this Purdue defense a bit. And on the defensive side for Michigan, like I said, they've been regressing a little bit, but Michigan, they'll force Braden Smith to be a scorer tonight, and I think that only benefits them. Um, you take away Braden Smith's best asset is his playmaking ability, and it hurts the rest of this Purdue offense in general. And obviously, Smith can score the ball. Like he's a great point guard. He's a great all around point guard, and he's going to be able to have opportunities in the mid range here and score efficiently there too. But it's not an efficient shot overall, and I think Michigan's threes can beat Purdue's mid range twos in this game. And yeah, Michigan, they'll play that drop coverage. They'll stay home on 3-point shooters. So guys like Lawyer, Cam Heide, Miles Colvin, like aren't really going to get as many opportunities as they would typically get. And like Trey Kaufman-Renn should have some opportunities in post up, but I do trust Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf to hold their own there. But like I said, like Smith's playmaking ability won't really be on the forefront here in this game. And that's really what makes him one of the most dangerous point guards in the entire country. And because of this factor, I'll actually be on Braden Smith's point total of over 16.5. That total's gone way up since it came out at 15.5. I've actually seen a 17.5 out there as well. And it is because like the deep drop coverage that Michigan runs exclusively in pick and roll will lead to a ton of opportunities for Braden Smith to score in the mid range. And he's a very willing shooter in that area. Almost any time he gets that open shot in the mid range, he's being told to take it, and he is taking it. He'll take a high volume of shots and in the mid range area. And like earlier in the year, they played against Alabama, and Alabama plays one of the deeper drop coverages in the entire country. And Braden Smith I believe he took 20 shots in that game and ended up getting over this point total of 16.5, and like didn't even shoot it well, but he continued to shoot these shots. And so I expect him to potentially have a pretty big day, but at the expense of Michigan kind of cutting off everybody else. And Michigan, they do have the personnel to guard Purdue one-on-one. Like they can contain Smith to an extent, but obviously the drop coverage in pick and roll is going to give him some opportunities there. But Vlad Golden can really contain Trey Kaufman-Renn, and the combo of Danny Wolf and Golden should win on the glass in this game, which isn't something I'm used to saying when you're playing against a Purdue team, but Michigan has a major advantage. They're, I believe, top 50 on the offensive glass, and Purdue is, they're one of the weaker defensive rebounding teams, like even in the country. They've really struggled. I believe they're outside of the top 200 in that area, and that's just, it really breaks down their defense. That's where Matt Painter's teams typically created their value, and it's just not really there this year. And like I said, I think the defensive improvement has been more from shooting luck than it has been from them actually being much improved. Obviously, the spot is kind of tough here to fade Purdue coming off that home loss against Ohio State, but I do personally have Michigan power rated as the better team here. And for them to get 4, I think is a little bit too high here. And I really wouldn't be surprised if Michigan was able to give Purdue a second straight loss in Mackey, which is a bit of a crazy thing to say, as this Purdue team's been solid this year and their offense is still great. But I'm willing to say that the matchup is a little bit too strong. It's stronger than the actual spot for Purdue, in my opinion. And I'll be backing them +4. I wouldn't hate a money line play here, because this game does feel like if it gets away, like Purdue's going to end up just running away with this game. But I think the matchup's too strong here, and I'll take Michigan +4. A few other leans on Friday. I lean Villanova +9.5. I'm not personally playing it, but if you guys wanted a little extra action, I would play Villanova +9.5 at Marquette. I think their ball security, their ability to shoot the ball, and getting on the offensive glass, those are 3 areas that you can, Marquette can kind of lose their defensive value. They turn teams over at one of the higher clips in the country. And if Villanova can take care of the ball to a good enough extent, I think they can give Marquette some real problems there. I just worry about the Villanova defense containing Cam Jones and David Joplin and company there. So ultimately not playing it. And another one is Iowa laying 3.5 at home against Penn State. The defense of Iowa just scares me a little bit too much to actually place a wager on this, but the spot is pretty significant for this Iowa team, coming off 3 straight losses, playing a Penn State team that's, kind of reeling. And I don't know if they have the real offensive firepower to expose Iowa, but Penn State's ability to play in transition and score at the rim and their rim frequency can just kind of it can break down this Iowa defense. And obviously it doesn't take much to break down this pretty bad Iowa defense, but the spot, and I think Iowa matches up pretty well on the offensive side. Penn State gives up a ton of spot up opportunities, and they rely on turning teams over to create value, and Iowa doesn't turn the ball over at all, and they have a ton of shooting. So I do think the spot is pretty significant for Iowa, but ultimately not playing that either. And that's all we have on Friday. But let's get into the real part of the show, the Saturday slate, which is loaded. I have a little bit less action than I would have liked to have this week, but we're gonna have 4 that we're gonna be talking about on Saturday, a couple on Sunday at the end here. But for the first game, it's maybe the game of the day. Kansas versus Houston. Looks like Kansas is laying 1 here, and that's the side I like here, despite Houston playing much better as of late. They're blowing out pretty much everyone, but I do like where Kansas is at right now. We backed them on Tuesday or Wednesday with some success at TCU. And overall, I was a tad surprised to see Kansas favored in this spot. Like Torvik and KenPom have Houston favored by 4 or 5 points, but going into Fog Allen, I think that would be a pretty crazy number. And the biggest reason is the new look. Kansas without KJ Adams, they look really good right now. And I'm not going to sit here and say KJ Adams is a negative to this team, but I do think they've started to turn the corner with the addition of Flory Badunga into the lineup, and he's playing many more minutes now than he was playing early in the year with KJ Adams playing the 4. And Adams has been ruled out already, so no need to worry if he's going to be in there and Badunga is going to get less minutes. But I really do like the addition of Badunga. I think he provides more value on both ends of the floor. Although Adams is he's a really good passer, and that could go a long way in this game. But I think Badunga's ability on the offensive glass has really given Kansas a new element that they haven't really had. They haven't been great on the glass all year long, but in their last 2 games, they've been all over the glass against Kansas State and TCU. I believe they had an over 37% offensive rebound rate against both of those teams, and that's an element they haven't had all year. They were one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the entire country before Badunga was inserted into the starting lineup and playing 25 plus minutes. So it's a bit of an underlying stat that I don't think many people are really taking into consideration right now. And there are paths to getting on the offensive glass here against an aggressive Houston defense. As Houston, they're just 142nd nationally on the defensive glass and defensive rebound rate anyway. And like I said, Kansas, they have 21 offensive rebounds in their last 2 games, and you can thank Badunga for a lot of that. And just to add on to the point of, this team being much better with the 2 big combo of Badunga and Dickinson, they've been a plus 55 point differential in just 96 minutes playing together this year, including in the last 2 games without KJ Adams. They've been a plus 36 point differential with those 2 guys on the floor. I believe there was only 25 to 30 minutes with those guys on the floor, and there were a plus 36 in those minutes. So they've been dominating competition with this lineup. Like I said, Adams isn't a bad player, but it is clear that Kansas is a better team with Badunga in the starting lineup. And the addition of Shaq Moore into the rotation, as he's in the last 4 or 5 games, he's seen a huge minutes increase, and he's been starting actually. They've seen a much better defense now at this point. They're currently 4th in KenPom in defensive efficiency, and Shaq Moore's ball pressure has led to this team turning some teams over a little bit more, which is another element that they haven't really had until they inserted him into the lineup. The 2-headed perimeter monster of Shaq Moore and DeJuan Harris has really gotten after opposing backcourts, and I think they could force some turnovers here, albeit, Houston is a very good team when it comes to taking care of the ball. I do think they can potentially create some value there. Obviously, Zeke Mayo, Rylan Griffin, and AJ Storr lead to hit some outside shots against this Houston defense that defends on the interior better than pretty much anyone in the country, or in fact, they are the best 2-point field goal percentage defense in the entire country. They're teams are shooting less than 40% inside the arc against them, which is utterly ridiculous. But I do think Kansas has avenues to score on the interior as well. Zeke Mayo and Griffin, and especially AJ Storr, like they all played pretty well last game, and AJ Storr was especially great on both ends of the floor. The defense was even more impressive for me. So I do think those guys are kind of starting to turn a corner here. And obviously Houston's a great team, and they're probably the better team overall here. I mean, this line is obviously implying that they're a better team by 3 to 4 points. I mean, the line of 4 to 5 would have been crazy. Calling this team 9 points better than Kansas on a neutral is a bit wild, but I do think we're still getting a decent number, and the matchup is pretty significant here. But the Houston offense hasn't been great in big games this year. They have been unlucky in close games. However, they lost to Auburn after leading by double digits early in the season, and they lost to Alabama and San Diego State in overtime. So the close game variance hasn't really been on their side, but the offense went through too many droughts in those games to really come out with wins, especially against San Diego State. If you can't outscore that team, then your offense has some pretty significant issues in big games. And another aspect of this game is the health of Emmanuel Sharp. That's going to be something to monitor here. He missed last game against Utah with the ankle injury that's been bothering him a little bit throughout the course of the season, throughout conference play at least. And he's extremely important to this team, and especially on the offensive end. Shooting the ball has been, his main, that's what makes him so great on this Houston team. And their shooting depth falls off pretty quickly with him off the floor. Like, you still have LJ Cryer and Uzan's making some shots, but they don't have any like volume shooters that you can really trust outside of Cryer and Sharp. And when you miss one of them, Kansas will kind of key in on Cryer and force some other guys to beat them, like Juwan Roberts to the post-up game, which isn't something that it probably isn't going to be there in this game with Bedunga and Dickinson being able to defend them in the post. And obviously, I mean, Houston's defense could win them this game. They're the best defense in the country. I'm not going to argue that. But I do trust the KU guards to take care of the ball at a high enough level in this game with Shaq Moore and DeJuan Harris. Yeah, Adams would be nice for that element, but I do think Kansas getting on the offensive glass is more significant than the turnovers. And they are, and like I said, they're a different team, or the Jayhawks are a different team with the added Bedunga minutes. So give me Kansas to get the job done at home in the fog. I don't think many teams can come into this building and win. Just like last year, it was kind of the same aspect, the same element going into that game. Kansas was being viewed as the much lesser team, and they ended up blowing out Houston in that game when Houston was considered the best team in the entire country at that point. So I do expect a similar outcome. So I will take the Jayhawks -1. Wouldn't play it much higher than that. I'd probably lay up to 2. That's as high as I would go, as the number would definitely start to get priced out at that point. But I really do love where Kansas is trending at this point. So moving on to the next play here, we're going to stay in the Big 12. This play is kind of gross, but we're going to go with Utah at home, getting 2.5 points against Baylor. And like I said, it's a gross play with Utah. They've been playing pretty bad as of late, and they just lost to Houston by 34, and they scored just 36 points as a team. It was really ugly. They turned the ball over. I mean, it could have been 100 times. I wouldn't have been surprised. They just couldn't hold on to the ball. They couldn't generate any looks. But overall, this is more of a pure fade of Baylor, who has some real issues right now, and the issues stem from their health at this point in time. And they were already thin at the guard spot without Langston Love. They just recently got Celestine back, but now Jeremy Roach is in concussion protocol, so you're going to be missing 2 more guards. This is his second concussion of the season, so I would be pretty surprised if he returned tomorrow. But overall, I will be betting this either way, just because the depth isn't great, regardless of how many guys they really have back in the rotation. Like, the rotation really only goes to 9 and to 9 deep, and they're only playing 7 guys right now. And for Roach, I really don't expect him to play, because this is his second concussion of the year, and he just sustained it on Sunday, I believe, against TCU. And you're typically going to miss more than a week when you you have your second concussion of the year. So definitely don't expect him to play. He's a really important player for the creation of this offense, and that's where you can beat Utah. And they're just not going to have as much of that on Saturday. And this is a huge concern with the depth, especially when you're playing in elevation in Salt Lake. And like I said, Baylor's playing a tight 7-man rotation right now, and should be a major edge in favor of the Utes here. And the Utes have been pretty terrible lately, as I said, but this is a really good revenge spot and just a high motivational spot in general after getting blown out by Houston on the road. They lost to Baylor by 25 on New Year's Eve as well, but that was a game that just kind of got away from them from the jump, and Baylor was a healthy team at that point. But I actually don't really mind the matchup for Utah, regardless of how the last game went. There's a pretty decent chance Baylor's going to play zone for large portions of this game with probably the tired legs, especially in the second half. I think you're going to see a lot of Baylor zone, and the zone really hasn't been all that great. They're giving up a ton of looks from the perimeter, and it's not really something you can do against this Utah team. They have the shooting to beat any zone over the top. It's kind of what a Craig Smith team is predicated off. Field goal percentage wise, or their ability to score the ball comes from their outside shooting and sharing the basketball. They always have one of the higher assist rates in the country, so they profile as a team that can play really well against zone. And I feel pretty confident that Baylor is gonna play a lot of zone here. As they played 22 defensive possessions in zone last game against Kansas State with the same rotation that it's looking like they're gonna come into this game with. And honestly, I expect even more, just because you're playing a tight rotation in elevation. So if those guys are tired, they're not going to play as much man. Like I said, guys like Gabe Madsen or Mason Madsen, the twins from Utah, Mike Sharp jumps, and Hunter Dickinson can absolutely light it up from the perimeter at any time. And I expect a lot of open looks to come their way against this probably more packed in Baylor zone with their tired legs. Utah can also get on the offensive glass against Baylor when they're playing more zone, and that's always been an avenue for their offense as well, as they play a bigger, more mobile big men in their front court. So I do expect them to have success on the glass. It's not really a Utah team I'm high on, but the spot, the matchup, and Baylor's health are the three reasons I'm going to be playing this. And I would back Utah at any number as an underdog here. And I believe that's the last Big 12 game we have to cover here. But for a couple others on Saturday, we're going to go back to the Mountain West. We're going to go back to a team that I've bet on quite a bit this year and haven't had all that much success. It was a team I was super high on in the preseason. It's Nevada, and we're going to go back to them. I can pretty much guarantee you this will be the last time I'll back Nevada if they end up losing this game. I've been burnt so many times backing this team this year. But take Nevada -2 at home against the San Diego State Aztecs. They've been really unlucky. Nevada has been extremely unlucky in close games versus quality competition this year. Outside of their blowout road loss to Utah State on Wednesday, it's really the only time they've been blown out against quality competition all year. They're outside of that game, their margin of defeat in their losses, which is 4 other games, has been 2.5 points on average, with their largest loss coming, I believe it was by 5 points, and that was at home against Utah State. So if the ball just bounced their way a couple times so far this year, I think we would view this Nevada team a little bit differently, especially the game in New Mexico after they came off 3 straight losses. And I believe it was the shot from Nelly Jr. Joseph at the free throw line in overtime and they were down by 1 or up by 1, and Junior Joseph hit that shot at the buzzer to kind of put them out of their misery. And it was just such a deflating loss. And that's been mostly the story of their season. Obviously, they have other issues on the defensive end, but overall, I think a lot of this has been driven by their luck. And I expect them to turn it around here against the San Diego State team they've really struggled on the offensive end. And I don't think they'll be able to expose the poor defense on the perimeter from Nevada. They just don't have a lot of quickness, or lateral quickness at least. And it's not really an Aztec team that I expect to expose them. Their offense has been pretty poor all year. They've been obviously a defense first team. but I do think Nevada can have some success through the post and can shoot over the top of this defense that gives up quite a few threes. And like I said, San Diego State they've been pretty poor lately as well. They've arguably been worse than Nevada here in their last 2 to 3 performances. They're coming off an OT road win against probably the worst team in the league in Air Force, and a game that they should have lost. It was a Wayne McKinney layup at the buzzer that was basically given to him. He went 94 feet and ended up making a wide open layup somehow. I don't really know. He did it in 4 seconds. It was a bit of a weird ending to that game, but it was a game that they probably should have lost. They didn't play well at all. And before that, they lost to UNLV at home by double digits. And UNLV is not all that inspiring of a team. They're not a contender to win this league by any means. So they really haven't been playing well at all. And overall, this game just feels like kind of a last stand for Nevada. Like if they don't win this game against a really good Mountain West team perennially, and any team's going to be up for playing San Diego State at home. So I do expect their best effort of the year here. I'm still sort of high on this team. I'm not as high on them as I was in the preseason, but we're going to lay the 2 with Nevada, and I would play this up to 3. So, and that's we have one more game here to cover, and it's into the America East. Know the America East fairly well just because I went to the University of Maine, so kind of follow this conference fairly closely. But we won't be going to a Maine game here. We're going to be going to Vermont, the powerhouse, really perennially of this league. Obviously, they aren't the same team this year. They've had their struggles, and we're actually going to fade them here with UMBC. There's no official line out for this game at the time of recording, but I would play UMBC down to +5.5 on the road at Vermont. And obviously, this is mostly a fade of Vermont, as they haven't been anywhere close to the powerhouse that they've been in this league. They've won this league pretty much every single year that I can remember. There's been a few years that they haven't won the regular season, but this team has been fantastic under John Becker. But like I said, it's not the same, and they're also going to be without their 2 best shooters, and TJ Long and TJ Hurley, and those are the two guys that really make this offense go. And their shooting depth drops off really quickly when they aren't available. And I'm not completely sure if Hurley is going to be in or out, but it looks like TJ Long is going to be out for extended time. And I hate the fact that those guys are going to be out, and the shooting, the ball security is really weak when those guys are off the floor. But on the UMBC side, their defense it's been pretty bad so far this year, but I don't expect Vermont to expose this defense in any way, especially like they're going to be more interior reliant, and that's not something that a Vermont team is really used to. They don't really attack the offensive glass. That's an avenue that they could really use here in this game, but not sure if Becker's willing to, sacrifice his transition defense for getting on the offensive glass. So I don't trust Vermont laying any significant number at this point and where this team is at currently. But I mean, it is scary to fade this team in this league, as Becker is known as the best coach in this league and one of the best coaches at the mid-major level. But like I said, they aren't the same, and I'll fade them as a favorite of more than a possession gladly here. So I'll take UMBC at +5.5 or better. And that'll be the last play of the Saturday slate. Not the best Saturday slate, not a ton that really popped out to me. Not a super high volume better regardless, but we do have 4 plays that will most likely be locked in for a really good Saturday slate. A couple to mention for Sunday. Obviously, lines aren't out for these games yet, but just some leans that I have, and these plays will be officially dropped if I end up liking the number enough in the matchup. They'll be dropped on the Discord, or you can see those on Twitter as well, possibly an article on these games. It's 2 games in the American Conference. I like FAU +12 at North Texas, and I like UAB +9.5 at Memphis. Like, I don't trust either North Texas or Memphis laying any significant number. North Texas mostly for their pace, and they don't have really an elite offense. They play a super slow pace, and these defensive first teams that play at, I believe they're bottom 20 in adjusted pace so far this year and basically every single year. But I don't trust those teams laying double digits, especially. Obviously, FAU hasn't been as good as I imagine them to be in this league. Their defense has really struggled, and they're not making shots all that much right now. They do have good shot making. I think they have enough shot making to keep it within the number here. So I'll take FAU plus 12 most likely on Sunday. The other one is UAB plus 9.5 at Memphis. It's a pure fade of Memphis and a fade of Memphis as a sizable favorite. They've been really bad in the spot, especially in conference play. They've seen it against like North Texas. They were laying 9.5 there, and that was a no brainer for me with a North Texas team that I love as an underdog. And just last game they were playing with their food again against Wichita State as a double digit favorite, and Wichita almost stole that game from them. And Memphis ended up winning by 8 or 9, I believe, but teams can just kind of hang around when Memphis isn't bringing the same kind of energy that they typically bring in big games. Like, this is a team that you want to bet on as a dog in non-conference against a really quality team. And that's not really what we're getting. UAB obviously has talent, but Memphis will always step up against some of the top teams in the country because their talent matches those other top tier teams in the entire country. But I do like UAB, who's playing much better as of late in conference play. They struggled early on, but they are playing a lot better, and I trust their upside here, and actually wouldn't mind either playing them on the money line, or another route you can take here is maybe sprinkling on their conference title odds here. They're sitting at plus 900 right now, and I think Memphis is going to lose a few more games in this league, and this UAB team has the most upside in the entire league. And obviously they've blown some big leads so far this year as well, but I believe they're undefeated in the league right now at 5-0 or 5-1. Sorry, they're 5-1. They lost to North Texas earlier this year in a heartbreaker, but I do think they have the most upside in the league, and Memphis can go on the road and lose to pretty much any team in this league, in my opinion, if they don't bring energy. So that might be the route I take, is playing their conference title odds, just kind of playing the upside of this team and the downside of Memphis. But will most likely be on UAB plus the points on Sunday. Hopefully we're getting double digits, but I would probably play this down to plus 8 for UAB, and that will do it for the show. But to see our late additions to our betting card, make sure again to join the Discord. It's completely free as well, and you can find that in our Instagram and Twitter bios. You can also find our player props in there as well, as I mentioned, as I frequently bet player props, diving into the matchups, and believe you can find some real angles there. And there's a lot of value on college basketball player props in general. So don't miss out on those. You can see those on Twitter, or like Discord sees them first. So don't want to miss out on the best number there. And like I said, they have a ton of value. You can really dive into the matchups for college hoops games. And if you know the game well enough, you can really, you can really make some money in that area. But for now, good luck on your wagers, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.